Okay, I'm gonna do this one for Mr. Solo because he asked that question. Does a woman's sexual history matter? I think I typed in the comments section, is that a question? And the fact is, the reason I typed that is because it's obvious. Of course it matters. Her sexual history always matters, just as a man's sexual history matters. It's different for a man than it is a woman, but his sexual history does matter just as much as a woman's does, but a woman more so. And there's not only logic, but and reason behind it, but there's also physiology and chemistry behind it. And I think I've dealt with some of the more emotional and logical reasons behind why her sexual history matters in a few of my videos. But we're going to get into the other parts of why it matters. Women were built to emotionally bond to their children, to their offspring. That's what they're built for. That's what the mother is there for. And there's mechanisms that help her with that particular mission. The newest of which is what they call mycochimerism, which you can find that is more of an explanation about that on my channel, on both my channels, really. You can look that up to get into a deeper detail, but suffice to say that womb absorbs material, genetic material. When a woman has a baby or a guy lets off in her raw, he's going to leave genetic material inside of her to some varying degrees. So that womb, just like anything else, just like a clay pot, it's going to absorb some of the material that enters into it. Well, like I said, look on my channel for mycochimerism and male mother need to kind of get into a deeper detail of how they explain that. Now, we all know women run on emotion, and they're built to emotionally bond. And there's a chemistry behind that. And we're going to use the chemistry to kind of explain what happens to a woman when they have a bunch of partners. Now, I learned this a long time ago in fact, this has been over 20 years ago. There's a very good book. I don't know if it's still in print. It probably is still in print. It's called The Alchemy of Love and Lust by Teresa L. Crenshaw. And when I read the book, it was a revelation because a lot of things that I had noticed in my love life and my dealings with women all of a sudden make sense because now there was a physical component to go along with the observations that I had about falling in love, seeing women fall in love, seeing how they react to sex, certain aspects of sex. Remember that joke that Eddie Murphy told if you make a woman go, if you make her come real hard, all of a sudden she changes her attitude and the way she sees you. Everybody thought it was a joke. And the old school players like you, Mr. Solo, knows that happens to be true. But there's also a science behind that. Now, according to Miss Crenshaw, and I'd had to go dig up the book, but I was going online and there's other references talking about this. There's about 5 chemicals they call 5 love chemicals that interact with each other that causes this mating response or this attachment response. The initial one, which is not the main one, but the initial one, which is that love at first sight gene, but the hormone, which is called PEA or phenylethylamine. Sorry, I'm the old chemistry background. I've lost some of the ways to pronounce these particular words, these Greek words that they give you. But it's what the PEA hormone that is produced in the brain when you an initial meeting. So if a woman is into you, she gets your scent, as I say. She gets excited. The PEA hormone causes a dopamine and a type of adrenaline to be released, which is if I can pronounce this, I think it's norepinephrine. It's more like an adrenaline substitute. So when you ever meet a woman and you get that, the sweaty palms and the heart races and the pupils dilate and you get excited and suppresses your hunger, it acts more like a methamphetamine. So it acts like crank in your system. So PEA releases that and it releases dopamine. So you get a euphoric high in your brain. And it's even more so for a woman that's emotional, because one, the woman doesn't have the testosterone to actually control it. And number two, she doesn't have the logic to control it. So when she gets hit with it, she gets swept up by emotion. And that's it. When she has your scent, every time she's near you, she's going to get that reaction. And the second hormone, which they call it the bonding hormone, or the cuddle hormone, as people say, which is oxytocin, which is something everybody else has talked about. They even have it in a nasal spray if you can get it by prescription. They call it the cuddle hormone. They call it the bonding hormone, and they call it the trust hormone. And all of these things have, especially PEA, have a very, very addictive response to them. So in other words, say for instance, you're an alpha male. That's how alpha widows are created. If you're an alpha male, you hit her, she gets a huge dose of that PEA to where she wants to be around you all the time. And then if you are a swordsman, as they used to say, you good with your wand, you hit her and she gets that big burst of orgasm. It causes oxytocin to be released. As I said, there's two major instances that is going to cause a huge release of oxytocin in a woman: childbirth and orgasm causes the release of oxytocin, and that is so that she will bond to the child. The same thing will happen to her if you give her an orgasm. She will bond to you. So you match that up with the PEA that gives her the high of being around you or being around a particular man. She becomes a dope fiend. Now, say she breaks up with that guy. Okay, that's her first love, her first alpha. It's blown her mind. She's going to look for that high again. She's going to chase you. Ever been around a dope fiend? What do? They're chasing the high. Especially if a woman is emotional and she's fairly decent looking. If one cock gave her that emotional high, maybe another one will. So she chases that high, okay? But she doesn't get the same dose. She finds another guy she's attracted to. She gets the rush. She may even get the orgasm, but it's not the same. So she breaks up with that guy because that particular alpha can't give her the same feeling that her first alpha is, like that first hit of dope. She goes to the next guy. Okay, that guy's no good. Couldn't get the rush. She goes to the next guy until she finds a guy that will give her that rush. If she continues this cycle, guess what's going to happen? She's going to build up a tolerance for these drugs. You ever see in red pill language, they talk about the 1,000-mile stare, right? That a woman has after she's ridden on the cock carousel too many times. There's a reason for that. Just like a dope fiend that's been on dope a long time, they have that same kind of blank stare, right? Because they built up a tolerance not only to the drugs that they've been ingesting, but also the natural drugs that keep you healthy and keep you up in regular life. So you can tell a chick after she's ridden the cock carousel, she's a little bitter. She can't bond. She can't feel normally because she's gone through that cycle of highs and lows, of being on that high and then withdrawal, being on that high and withdrawal. And every time she goes through that cycle, she becomes less and less or more and more insensitive to that drug. She builds up a tolerance to these particular drugs and all the other things like dopamine and all the natural drugs that are actually in her brain chemistry. She becomes insensitive and she gets that stare. Same the way that 1,000-mile stare is that guys come back after they've been in the service. If they've been in combat and they've lived in fear with the adrenaline rushes that they have to get to actually keep going, eventually, guess what? They're going to become what? Tolerant. They're going to build up a tolerance to that rush, to the adrenaline, and they're going to come back with a 1,000-mile stare. So you see that blank look in that woman's eyes, just like a hooker's, the dead eyes of a hooker. The brain can't respond to it anymore, can't respond to touch anymore. So after a while, what that woman is looking for is that alpha that's going to push away all the, brush away all that past stuff, all those past guys, and give her that new high. And if you can't, if you with a girl and you can't deliver on that because she's chasing higher of that first alpha and that she hasn't been able to maintain. So you have to go over and above that to actually get her to engage with you again. So basically she's tainted. And if you can't rise above that level, that excitement level, that rush, she's tainted. And after a while, when the initial high dies off and you're in relationship with her, what's going to happen when she crashes? How is she going to deal with those withdrawals? How is she going to respond to you emotionally? So in other words, if you get a virgin woman and you fall in love with her and you give her that orgasm, guess what? You're constantly supplying her high. There is no first alpha. There is no initial rush. You perpetuate that. She doesn't know anything differently. But if she's been through 100 guys, and a lot of black women have been through 100 guys, don't let them tell you anything different. There's a lot of women that's been through that. We're not talking about just strippers. By the time they're 30, the average woman nowadays has been through at least 30, 35 men. At least 35 men. And that's just 2 a year. If they start when they're 15, like most girls start when they're 15. That's just 2 a year that they'll admit to. If we talk about what they won't admit to, we're talking about upwards of 50. So she's by the time you get to her, she's become insensitive and built up a tolerance to the natural drugs that would have her bond to you. So can she bond to you? It's like a sticky tape that's been pulled on and off 30 times. Okay. If you've used that same piece of tape 30 times, guess what? The 30th time, it's not going to stick. You need a new piece of tape. So I'm saying that to say this. Women are controlled by their emotions. Their brain chemistry affects their emotions. So if she can't generate the natural hormones to bond and fall in love with you and stay in love with you because she's intolerant to the drug, she's built up a tolerance to the drug, to the hormones, there's going to be a problem. There's going to be a problem for you to overcome. There's going to be a problem for you to maintain. And that's on top of all the other stuff that being in multiple relationships and riding the cock carousel brings. So if we just deal with just that, just the brain chemistry alone, that's enough. So if you meet a girl or meet a girl that's been through a lot of relationships and she's normal, because there is an exception to the rule, and I will get to that in a second. You have to worry about her ability to bond. You got to worry about her ability to stay faithful to you, because she could put on an act for a year and you get married to her, you hook up with her, and all of a sudden the sex is going to dry up because guess what? It doesn't give her pleasure anymore, or it doesn't give her the same high that she used to get. Now let's get to the exception. One thing I didn't know that I have experienced, I'm sure most guys that have been around the block a few times have experiences. There is an exception to this rule, and that's the crazy broads. People that have manic highs or bipolar produce a lot of these chemicals naturally. They have the ability to produce these chemicals. So you're wondering why that crazy broad is so good in bed and so wild and so addicting is because she produces what the virgin produces the first time constantly. That's just her natural makeup. They don't have a tolerance. They don't build up a tolerance to the chemicals. They don't have an off switch for it. So that's why them crazy chicks are on fire every time you bang them. And that's how come that experience that is abnormal to most chicks is addictive to guys. Trust me, I know. I've had a few of them. Well, basically more than my share, which is why I'm a MGTOW now. But anyway, Mr. Jones, that's my answer, or partially my answer. This is something I taught to my daughters when they were young. I taught them that they should be very careful with their wombs and who they give it to, and not constantly be up in guys' faces, because you're more susceptible to falling to these traps, to these hormonal traps. You around enough guys, there's going to be more than a few of them that the PEA hormone is going to inflict you with, and you're going to get smitten. And if you run into that wrong guy that you get smitten by, and he knows what he's doing, he can put that whammy on you. You get that double dose, and you'll wind up being an alpha widow real quick. Ask Crystal and Kerosene. Anyway, I didn't need to put that plug in. And I don't want to make this long because I know you hate long videos. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. That's my answer. This is BGS out.